Welcome, welcome. It is wonderful to see you all in the middle of the day. We're going to talk about food, something that's near and dear to my heart. There are many reasons to think about and adopt a diet based on that's vegan and that's plant-based. I myself am not totally vegan. But you can think of the ethical arguments about animal welfare. You can think about the health arguments for people. And you can think about the climate arguments for being vegan and plant-focused, plant-forward. We at Perry World House think about climate a lot. We're, I think, best known for our work on climate adaptation. As the temperature rises, we can obviously try to mitigate that, but we're also going to have to learn how to live with it. And part of learning how to live with it is figuring out how food is going to be used in a world where the temperature is going up and up. A lot of COP30 will focus inevitably on food and climate change. If COP28 was about health and the climate, COP30 is almost inevitably going to focus on food and the climate. Today, we're welcoming two pioneers in thinking about this topic, Chef Richard Landau and Kate Jacoby, who are going to come here. They are famous Philadelphia restaurateurs. About 2 months ago, in February, I happened upon Ground Provisions. And I don't know how many of you have eaten at Ground Provisions, but it is one of those places you go in, you have a meal, and you're just blown away by every dish being better than the previous dish, and by the staff who explain to you everything that went into the vegan dish. And you have no idea that you're eating vegan because the food is just so delicious and so well prepared. Some of you know that I am an inveterate ranker. I like to rank everything. You know, I rank the 3 or 4 best chocolates in the world. Happy to give you that. I rank my meals in the world as I travel. And I will tell you that Ground Provisions is one of the 10 best meals I've ever had in my life. It's that fantastic. And someone said to me, you know, the great vegan restaurant, Vedge. And I said, oh no, but there's an even better one, Ground Provisions. Little did I know that the people who do Vedge do also Ground Provisions. That's how stupid I was. One of the great things about Richard Landau and Kate Jacoby is that they're real pioneers in this field, that they really began. Richard Landau in 1994 opened his first restaurant, Horizon, joined in 2001 by Kate Jacoby, and they have just pioneered thinking about how you expand this kind plant-based foods and how you make them mainstream for those of us who do not regularly eat them and make us think about them. For their brilliance and their innovation in food, they have both won or both been named James Beard nominated chefs. Kate for her pastries and Chef Landau for best chef in the Mid-Atlantic region. And in Philadelphia, he's been named the best chef twice by Philadelphia Magazine. We're really honored to have them here to discuss plant-based foods and to discuss the impact of climate on how we think about our food system and the foods we eat and how that ought to influence our deliberations. With that, they will be interviewed by Michael Weisberg, the deputy director here at Perry World House, a philosopher who works on climate and who's heading our climate initiative at Perry World House and is really thoughtful about how we need to think about adaptation in the world. Final point. 5 of you will win a Vedge cookbook. I'm jealous. Enjoy the questioning and discussion, and we hope there will be time at the end, not at the end, even in the middle, for you to ask your own questions about plant-based foods and to these wonderful, wonderful chefs. So thank you for coming, and here they are.
Thank you, Zeke, for that very kind introduction for all of us. I just learned from Rich in backstage that I don't think Zeke mentioned Benjamin Franklin, which he typically does in an introduction, and you'll never guess who brought tofu to the United States but Benjamin Franklin. So I think, see, we all learned something new today. So we're starting off in a great place. It's a great pleasure to be with Rich and Kate today. We were reminiscing that about 20 years ago they were on campus in one of the college houses and actually did a cooking demonstration based on their first restaurant, Horizons. So it's really great to have you back on campus. Really a pleasure to have this conversation. And this conversation is part of this ongoing work at Perry Wodehouse on adaptation. We just finished a big conference on food and climate change, and today we're going to really talk about the most practical part of that, which is cooking and eating. So let me just again, welcome you, and I'd love to just ask a really straightforward question. Tell us about Vedge and Ground Provisions and V Street and Horizons and all of your other things. What inspired you to elevate vegan dining to this really fine level, and what inspired you to do it here in Philadelphia? Do you want to start us off, Kate?
Sure. Thank you so much for having us and the very warm welcome in this absolutely gorgeous space. It's truly a delight to be doing this today. We love what we do, but this is a real treat. I started out as a customer when Rich was cooking, and he opened in 1994 in Willow Grove, and I started going as a customer, and I thought, wow, like this food is amazing, and you know, if one could eat like this every day, it would be so easy to be vegetarian. So it actually made it very, very easy for me to commit to that sort of lifestyle from about 16, which is also the age that you started, right? 16, you went vegetarian?
Yeah, sure.
But you know, Rich got it started in Willow Grove, and I was a customer, joined up working with him then in 2001. And right from the early days, your vision was to take that food to as broad an audience as would enjoy it. And so Rich already had his eye on, you know, making the food itself really legitimate and taking it, you know, maybe to Center City, Philadelphia. So I was like, that's a great idea. I'm on board. Let's do it. So you want to pick up?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was a period of time before, I call it pre-K, before Kate joined up in 94 to 01. I was, you know, so my journey started with just loving food from a very, very young age. I just loved to eat, loved to cook. Big question is what was for dinner at our house every night. And I had a little garden too when I was growing up. I was, you know, very young, but I was just inspired to plant a vegetable garden in our backyard. And I found the process of taking vegetables from the garden into the kitchen, this very beautiful process. It was the kind of stuff people write poems about and paint pictures about, harvesting your produce and bringing it in. And one night we were having dinner, and I asked my dad, well, where does this steak come from? And he said, well, it comes from cows. And I imagined a cow like laying a steak like a chicken would lay an egg. Oh, that's cool. But as I found out the truth, you know, this is before YouTube, before the internet, you know, so it's something you don't really talk about, you know, unless someone brings it up. When I found out what was happening to get meat on the plate, I was shocked, and I was a little horrified. I was, you know, we had pets. I loved animals. But what struck me the most was the contrast between bringing the vegetables from the garden into your kitchen and the process it took to bring meat into your kitchen. And right away I said, well, I can do this vegetable thing, but I could never get a cow onto the plate. It was just shocking to me. So I had this immediate ethical aversion. The problem is that I already love the taste of meat. I find there's two kinds of vegetarians or vegans. There are ones that are just completely put off by the taste and the smell and the idea of meat. I'm the opposite. I'm the kind that still misses meat. I walk past a barbecue and I still want to secretly jump in there. So my goal was to cook food that kind of satisfied my palate. I still love food. I still love the taste of meat. So I thought if I can get these flavors from my vegetables, if I can get the flavors into the vegetables that will kind of remind me of what I love about meat, I could be a vegetarian and I wouldn't miss all this, keeping my palate entertained. And then as years went on, I said, okay, well, maybe I could open up a little restaurant and do this. And that's where it all started in 1994 with this little cafe inside of a health food store, just trying to demonstrate to people that a good meal is a good meal. I think people would rather have a great meal with vegetables than a bad meal with meat. And that's how it started. And then Kate and I met, and well, you know the rest.
Well, thank you so much for that. I'd love to hear a little more about, Philly is, of course, a city. If you ask people who've not from Philly to name foods associated with Philly, one of them involves cheese and one of them involves meat. And so, so people have often not. I've been a vegetarian also since I was a teenager, and it is, people sometimes find it surprising that the best vegetarian dining in the country is in this city. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, how that has changed and your role in shaping that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wear many hats. Much of my time has been in the kitchen. Some of it is behind the bar. A lot of it is on the floor. So I have talked to a lot of people, and I just listen to everybody, and I'm so happy to say that our audience is so broad, and I guess the idea was, it's almost like a challenge. It's like, if you're going to do it anywhere, here, do it in Philly. And, if you can make it in Philly, especially in Willow Grove, we were by the Naval Base. And, we were so, I guess, it meant so much. Like, the vegans would find you, and they'd be so thankful. It was like, and you felt so good. And for that reason, it just made you want to, get it further, get it more recognition, so that everybody could point to a restaurant and say, see how successful this one is, I can bring anybody there and they'll enjoy it. But then you would have folks who would just hear about it, a foodie, and they would want to try it. And I think for us as chefs, that became the biggest reward. It was and also the folks working in our kitchen. I think that the idea of taking vegetables seriously and recognizing that cooking vegetables was its own art. It wasn't just a garnish. And if you actually apply the same appreciation and you source properly and you really take it seriously, you can achieve really, really great things. So I think operating in Philadelphia, Rich also points out that, Philly diners are how do you describe it really well? Because it's they really care. There's no smoke and mirrors here, right? Yeah,
well, I find in Philly, I always say there's one degree of separation here. Most of us who are born here stay here. And the Philly clientele are very proprietary of their chefs. I mean, we are your neighbors. You will see us walking down the street. And you have to put out a great product every night because you're cooking for people that you will see on the street, and you do have to, in a sense, answer to them. But also to expand on that, another important aspect of the dining experience for us was the alcohol. And this was at a time when most vegan restaurants, we're going back to what, 04, 03, 04. Most vegan restaurants were these kind of hippy-dippy places. You walk in, the place smells like patchouli, and you know how it goes. Everybody's stoned, which full circle, now everybody is stoned.
Brown rice and black beans was the meal, right? We remember these. For those that didn't go, avocado, black beans, brown rice, and sprouts. That's what you got.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a pine cone in there or something, something really crunchy. But we felt we did not want to compete with vegan restaurants. We did not want to be a vegan restaurant. We wanted to be a mainstream restaurant that just happened to not serve any meat. That was how we approached it. But to do that, to really be legitimate, you needed a really good wine list. You needed single malt scotches. You needed something the clientele we were trying to reach were the mainstream diners. And when they walk in, they see the beautiful wine racks, and they see the collection of scotches and bourbons, they know everything's going to be okay. And they also, that becomes part of the meal. I mean, you know, we love wine with a great meal. It changes it a lot. So at that time, a liquor license in Willow Grove was like $230,000. It was $60,000 downtown. You know, still not cheap, but definitely, you know, something that we could, you know, kind of wrap our hands around. Also being in the city, being in, you know, a world-class city like Philadelphia, which I think at the time was the 5th largest, now we're the 6th largest city in the country. It brings a certain sense of legitimacy to what you're doing. People take you a little bit more seriously than being in a suburban strip mall. So we had to do it to survive, and we had to do it to show that what we were doing could stand up there with, you know, the big guns that were downtown already.
So I want to get to the kind of present, but you mentioned your wine program and your alcohol program. How does that fit into the vegan landscape? Was it possible to get vegan wine in 2004 or 2007, and is it possible now?
It is, yes. When we first got our liquor license, that was something I was sort of like stopped in my tracks. Like someone asked me about vegan wine, and I thought, what would not be vegan about wine, right? It's just grapes, isn't it? So I very quickly dug into it and figured out that there are many aspects of winemaking that could make it not qualify as vegan, the most substantial being the fining or filtering of the wine. So as you're fermenting your wine, there's going to be some sediment left over, and if you want to get that out of your wine, you might choose to fine it, usually with an animal protein, so dropping something into a vat of fermented wine as it sinks to the bottom, the sediment gathers to it, and then you can pour off the wine, or filtering it, passing it through a filter that would have the same kind of protein. So you can use non-animal sources for that, or you can just not filter it. And, you know, it just set me on a path of learning a lot about winemaking and natural wines, many of which are not fined or filtered because the winemakers are just doing very careful practices and paying close attention and making small batches. So it really set me on a path to love and appreciate wine and to treat it like it is this artisanal living product that like an artist, you know, a chef is working with food and a winemaker is working with the wine. So to me, it was like really exciting. It was very daunting at first. I remember I was like, I'm going to be serving just Yellowtail. At the time, that was like the one big mainstream wine that was apparently vegan, or at least at the point, the ones I was looking up. But no, it was actually great because, you know, just like with the food, I feel like when you're working with a certain umbrella of ingredients, you're really going to pay such close attention. And then the same thing, when I was going to work with certain wines, it just made me want to learn more about the winemakers, the regions, the soil, why certain varietals will do well here and maybe not well there, or why this one is really mainstream and why this one is actually more coveted and celebrated. So I think I enjoyed learning all of that, and I think casually, you know, sort of introducing our customers to those aspects, making them very approachable, but for anybody that cared about it, being ready to answer questions has been like one of the most fun parts of my job.
So thanks for that. I'd love to so we started 20 years ago, you know, fast forwarding to now, of course you have these incredibly successful and very delicious restaurants. What really has changed? I mean, for one thing, I mean, you tend to not even hear restaurants called vegan anymore, plant-based or plant-forward or something like that. But do you see, has the American palate evolved, the Philadelphian palate evolved, has your approach evolved? What's changed in the 20 years?
Well, for one, we never use the word vegan on our menus anywhere. When I opened in '94, never used the word vegetarian. I mean, at that time, you know, it came with all these preconceived notions of what that place was going to be. You know, it's cool now to be a vegan restaurant, but we still never put it on there because I think again, we're trying to reach the people that don't really know about this, that would otherwise not come to a vegan restaurant, but they would come to a vegetable restaurant. So we try to market ourselves as a vegetable restaurant. Vegan is a diet, it's a lifestyle, it's a mindset maybe. Vegetables are food, and we're chefs. We wanted to serve food, and that's what, you know, how we wanted to market ourselves. So we've never really used that word. I also feel like, you know, vegan might suggest what you're not going to be getting at your meal. We wanted to convey a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment with your dining experience. So That being said, it did hit a certain point where it did become very cool to be a vegan restaurant. If you open up a vegan restaurant now, you will be very, very busy when you open. Whereas when we first started, especially with Horizons downtown, just a lot of explaining, hand-holding, kind of
jokes.
Reassuring, a lot of cocktail party jokes, a lot of people saying they were going to get a cheesesteak afterwards, which, they usually didn't. So, no, we're really, we're happy with our lane there, with not trying to be a vegan restaurant. So, but it is really picking up. Now, our biggest goal was not really to have so many more vegan restaurants pop up, but is to have the mainstream restaurants take notice. We wanted, places like Vedge and all the heavy hitters in town to start to look at what we're doing, because one of the biggest problems we had going out to eat is that you just couldn't get anything good at a mainstream restaurant. You would start with the entrees, you scroll all the way down to the bottom, and there's your gnocchi or your lasagna or your pasta with garlic, and it was the same thing in every place. It was an afterthought, it was an apology, it was like, fine, here you go. So we wanted them to start to take notice, and that's what happened. So right now, there's a very creative vegan or vegetarian entree on almost every mainstream restaurant in the city. And that was a huge goal of ours, to have it become part of our way of life out here. It happens in LA and New York all the time. It's not a novelty, it's just the way people eat, and it's good to have that. Even the omnivores will go for that vegan entree to change it up. So.
Well, relatedly, and Kate, we were discussing this just a little earlier, tell us about desserts. I mean, in some sense, it's easy to say we're going to cook vegetables because they're food, but I think many people associate desserts with cream and with things that are not vegan. Eggs and cream and butter and sugar seem to be the ingredients of many classic dessert recipes, and I know one of your most important contributions to the city's vegan scene has been thinking about dessert. So can you tell us about that journey?
Yeah, so Zeke, what you were saying, we could hear a little bit behind. Some people come to plant-based eating, veganism, whatever you want to call it, they'll come to it for ethical reasons, like Rich described. Also maybe for personal health reasons, like I took an interest because my dad had heart disease, so that was very on my mind from a very young age. And then when I got to college, learning about the environmental impact for our world. So for whatever reason draws you in, people, they sort of pay attention. Maybe people have almond milk or oat milk in their fridge at home, but they don't really think about it otherwise. So anyway, when I got into the pastry side of things, there wasn't a lot available as a guiding light. There weren't many programs available. There weren't even that many great cookbooks, and there weren't tons and tons of blogs. And now if you come to today, you can learn whatever you want to learn on not just YouTube or Instagram, but I guess any source. So I guess it really kind of comes down to, what is your goal? It's also amazing to see the ride of butter, when people will say it's bad for you, it's good for you, it's bad for you, it's a superfood, it's bad for you. What is that? I don't know. So you have to decide why you want to eat the food that you want to eat. And that's a personal choice that you're going to make multiple times every single day. And you might vacillate, right? You might change your mind. I think that's another thing. People will try something and figure out what works for you, because everybody has a different base point from what they can afford, how much time they can spend, all those things. But I will say that it's become so easy. I mean, compared to when I started, the plant-based butters, creams, milks, they're so clean these days. You can make a lot yourself, and it's really inspiring just to think about the more attention is paid, the more people have a demand, and then people will meet that demand and they will provide for you. Someone will make it easier, because everything is about convenience. So I honestly feel like so many things have become a lot more attainable. And one of the things I mentioned, aquafaba, the water that comes out of a can of chickpeas. How many of you have worked with that at home, or heard of it at least? Okay, that's a lot of hands. It is so amazing. So if you want to make a meringue, a lemon meringue pie, you can actually make meringue on top, and it turns out great. So in a way, I always approached pastry with the same mindset of, it's got to taste amazing. And specifically, when you get to that indulgent part of your meal, you don't need to eat anymore. You had your dinner, now it's just for fun. You really need to make sure that it's delicious, indulgent. It's not like, oh, and it's a healthy dessert. You know, you wanted it to deliver. So I guess that was always my goal, and I just feel like it's easier and easier all the time to meet it. So.
Thanks. I know from some of our previous conversations that while some of this started for both of you as helping people eat more vegetables and eat in a different way, your mission has continued to expand, and now you think more about the food system as a whole, about thinking about circularity and sustainability in the restaurant business, in eating. I'd love to hear your reflections on that and how that plays a role in your new restaurants.
Yeah, I mean, Ground Provisions was really created to be what we thought was the solution to this constant restaurant apocalypse you're hearing about. Not just from a financial standpoint of sustainability, but with waste. I can tell you we're pretty good about waste. Always room to grow here. But most restaurants, I've seen things at doing events and being in other kitchens that truly shock me. Throwing out good food. One night we were sitting at a chef's counter somewhere, and they were doing a fried egg, and with a ring mold, they cut the egg out so it would be this perfect circle on top of a dish, and they took the outer ring of it and threw it in the trash. I mean, it just offended me. I mean, at least put it in staff meal. Let your staff eat it at the end of the night. And I think about that all the time when it comes down to waste. How much good food are we throwing out? Now, the scraps are one thing. Cauliflower, notoriously, half of it is going to be waste. Well, we use that for compost at home and at Ground Provisions. And that's a great thing to do to make soil. We use that to make soil to grow our own vegetables and everything. But it's the actual edible food waste that really kind of got to me. The fact that you're throwing out food that is just fine. It just doesn't fit. It's almost like in the supermarkets where everything has to be perfect. Well, that really struck a nerve with me. So we really believe in composting. We really try to find things that don't create a lot of waste. We try to use, it's the nose to tail cooking you hear about in mainstream restaurants. We call it, just a root to leaf cooking, basically, with what we do. But minimizing waste, I think, is crucial just for the survival of our industry. You can talk about the financial model up and down for days and days, but until we address the waste of it, we're not really tackling the problem, we're tackling the symptoms, And
I would add that when you care so much about the quality of your ingredients and you're really invested in that in the kitchen, you're not going to be quick to throw them away.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're going to think creatively about it, and then you're going to treat it like the gold that it really is. I will say it's not always easy. We've had mixed results with certain staff members loving it, and then we have other staff members who forget about it. And so a lot of it is your culture and what you establish with your staff, and trying to encourage people to take that journey with you. And I will also say that we're very tuned into the idea if it's a vegan or plant-based restaurant, you don't want to shove that down somebody's throat. I also don't want to shove it down anybody's throat about, when you go out to eat, you want to enjoy it. You want it to taste good. You don't want to think too much, you just want to enjoy it and have a nice time. So, those aspects of what we're trying to do and what we're always aspiring to do better are there, but we don't really, it's nice to talk about them now, but I guess we're also mindful of it being hospitality and people just wanting to have a great time.
Yeah, everybody wants all restaurants to be held to a very, very high standard when it comes to, almost everything of our culture and how we integrate ourselves into, what a great model business and society should be. But Kate's right, at the end of the day, 90% of all people, they just want a good meal and they don't want to pay an absolute fortune for it. And it's a very, very tough balancing act you have to do.
We're also fortunate at Ground Provisions that we have a yard, and so we actually have the space to do a couple levels of composting. So we have some bins and we have some cedar composters, and then at our home, same thing. So I know that, again, it's practical. If you have the space to do it, you can consider it. If you don't have the space, it's a little bit harder.
What's a surprising hit item on the menu that's from what other restaurants might have used as a scrap or just thrown out or composted?
That's a good question. I mean, stock is the number one place where most of your scraps should go, but it doesn't all work. I mean, if you make a vegetable stock out of everything you were going to throw out. It's going to be terrible. It's going to just taste like dirt and leaves. Believe me, I've done it. It's like the worst cup of tea you'll ever have. Yeah, so I mean, the best ones for stock for me are kale stems, leeks, broccoli stems. Everybody has broccoli stems. Another vegetable that is half of it is waste. Makes the best stock. Broccoli is a gift to any kind of stock pot. But there's other things, like we talked about cauliflower. You can get really creative with this. You can ferment it, you can dry it and powder it. But you're usually left with so much of it that you just don't know what to do with it, and that's where composting comes in. But I think it's kind of obvious which ones are like, carrots are easy. Carrots are almost all usable vegetables.
I also think behind the bar, I try to extract some extra flavor. So if people are juicing lemons for something, I'm like, hey, can we peel them first and save those skins, and we'll do something else with them. So I think like translating not just something that's savory from your food menu, but pulling that to the bar, or maybe making a really cool sorbet or something. So there's always like a second life.
Mm-hmm. And of course, you have a great new bar book, and which some of these techniques can be learned. While we're on the subject of before we turn to the very serious topic of climate change, let me ask you also. I think it's in the Vedge cookbook. You say your mission was to find a good way to cook every vegetable, including the ones you didn't personally like. So I'd love to hear from each of you a story about a vegetable that you didn't like and what you did with it.
Oh, I mean, Brussels sprouts for me. I mean, that was. God, I mean, probably like most of you, your parents gave them to you out of a can. I mean, my brother, with the juice from the can, they cooked them in that. I mean, come on, it's not food. It's just, so I grew up hating Brussels sprouts, like every kid did. But then you see them fresh. And, this may sound weird, so don't judge me, but I let the vegetables talk to me. Not literally, okay, take it easy. But you have to listen to them. There are things vegetables can do, and there's things vegetables can't do. Root vegetables like parsnips and carrots and celery root are full of beautiful, luxurious starch. Cook them down, puree them with a little bit of fat, and you have the most delicious, wonderful soup. You have other vegetables that are very dry. Like Brussels sprouts, like cabbage. You have vegetables that have a ton of water in them, like eggplant. So you have to look at what vegetables are, what they're capable of, and what you're going to do with them. And you got to get out of your mind the whole square peg into a round hole thing, about what you can and can't do with vegetables. But when I saw Brussels sprouts, I looked at them. I'm like, well, what do I see here? I see a little baby head of cabbage. So right away, I'm thinking, sauerkraut, coleslaw, any of these great cabbage dishes that we all love. And so one of the very first dishes we opened with at Vedge was our shaved Brussels sprouts. And we put them on the plancha, it's a cheesesteak grill. We call it a plancha because we're fancy, So you put them on there, you shave them down real thin, either with a really sharp knife or on a mandolin or on a food processor. And you put them down on the griddle with garlic oil, and you bring them off, and we just dress them with smoked mustard sauce. And it's the most incredible thing. It's like this warm kind of hot cabbagey coleslaw dish. But I did that because I looked at the Brussels sprouts, and I didn't I didn't stuff them, I didn't fry them, which everyone does now, which is just terrible. Because if you look at a Brussels sprouts, all layers, all they do is soak up oil. It's one of the worst vegetables to fry. You're just eating fryer oil. Sorry, other restaurants. Yeah, I'm gonna get some email for that. What was the question?
It was a favorite thing with the vegetables.
Yeah, so Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes.
That is one of my favorite recipes of yours too. Kate, did you have an answer to that too?
I'm the type of vegetarian that Rich described who doesn't crave meat. I grew up eating it, but I don't have any cravings for it. I will say, open to most vegetables, dill was something I didn't actually love, and it's because my mom would, sorry mom, but she would put dried dill on certain dishes growing up, like a lot of it, and so I had a certain expectation from dill. But then, you turned me on to roasted beets with a little fresh dill, and it was oh my gosh, it was amazing. So I would say I made a total 180 on dill.
So
Huge fan, and it grows prolifically. You should grow it at home. If you have any sunlight coming in, it will take over any space you give it. It's amazing.
All right, dill and Brussels sprouts.
Yes.
My grandmother also put dill in absolutely everything, so yeah, a little goes a long way, as you say.
It's delicious.
Sorry. Yeah, there we go.
Dad
So
joke.
before opening to the audience, let me ask you, about climate, because this wonderful event is part of a conference that we did on climate change and food. I mean, we all know that one of the really worrying impacts of climate change kind of in the near future is the very real threat of the collapse of the food system altogether. But I wonder, are you seeing any signs of that? Are you seeing changes to the vegetables that you can get? Are you seeing spikes in prices or strange lacks of availability?
I think the prices have always fluctuated like drastically on a lot of things. You've seen them, with unsuspecting things like eggplant. There's a huge eggplant crisis like about 10 years ago where it tripled in price and no one knew why. All sorts of theories came out. Nobody knows why. I think you're always going to see that. There's no doubt that the climate up here is changing a bit. We haven't seen it directly affect the vegetables like immediately, but it is happening. I mean, there's a great 60 Minutes program on a couple years ago about how they cannot grow great grapes in France anymore for wine. They're all being grown in the south of England now. If that's not proof that, things are changing, I mean, I don't know what is. So we're slowly starting to see it up here. I mean, one of the experiences, if you don't mind me just rolling into that one thing we talked about with the trucks, is that with the potential collapse of the food system, one thing I find that as chefs we have become very self-indulgent with was sourcing all of our boutique produce from all these different sources. I mean, just that phrase, boutique produce, is just loaded. It's a very, very dangerous path to walk down when we have to use these microgreens from this farm and these flowers from here, these edible flowers from this other place. These mushrooms come from here, the wild mushrooms come from there. At one point before the pandemic, I noticed about 9 or 10 trucks pulling up to our restaurant every single day because there's all this pressure to use all this precious produce. And I said, wait, what are we really doing here? Are we becoming so self-indulgent and so focused on trying to sell this kind of experience that we've been irresponsible to the environment? There's no reason a colonial city like Philadelphia should be having 10 trucks pull up to any restaurant. Now, I'm not saying go Cisco US Foods where it's one truck suits all, but I'm wondering if that isn't where we should be looking, where we have less trucks on the road, bringing more things in fewer trips to the restaurant. And I think we can start there and see where it goes.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like an idea. I'm always interested to see how AI is actually going to improve our lives, so I feel like making that connection. One of the things that made life easier for us to really feature delicious fresh vegetables was Lancaster Food Fresh Co-op. Really just doing such a great job of getting these fantastic farmers in Lancaster County united and making it easy to place an order and actually have it show up and be 99% correct. I mean, that was revolutionary for us to really be able to know the quality of our vegetables is going to be that high. But yeah, I think again what Rich was seeing and experiencing at Vedge, we got taken out by COVID, and as we were rebuilding and then thinking about doing ground provisions, we live 10 minutes from ground provisions. So the idea of doing our own farming and being able to have that experience firsthand of growing, I mean, this is our 5th growing season now. So we learn a little bit more each year, and each year has been a little bit different. And but seeing just how much goes into harvesting, washing, packaging in a careful way, bringing it to ground provisions and being able to highlight it. I guess the point is that the closer you're connected to who is producing that ingredient for you, the more you're going to respect the entire process, the more you'll be willing to pay for it, the more you'll be proud to share it with your customers who will sense that as well. And again, I never want to tell people they're not doing good enough. Life is hard. But I think that, as we're trying our best in the world, it's I feel like that's the avenue is be smart and efficient as much as you can and just, keep celebrating the pride that people take in what they're doing.
Great. So now I'm going to open the floor to audience questions. So Lauren will have a mic and she'll bring it to you, but I will call on you from here. So if you'll raise your hand, and we'd love to especially encourage the students in the audience to ask among the first questions. I'm only hesitating just to see if a student, but I'm not. But you look like a student at heart, so we'll start with you.
The furthest person away.
Okay. Okay. This will only take 2 or 3 minutes. Right next door at Kelly Ryder's house, a week or so ago, 2 young men received awards for writing about travel. One of the young men said he traveled to Australia to meet runners, and he would be running races with them. And he mentioned being served the best cappuccino. And I said, my name is Mina Smith, I said 40 years ago I was in Australia and I saw that if anybody wanted coffee, they had to drink cappuccino because they were all tea drinkers then. At the time, the Australians needed to increase their population, so they encouraged Italians to migrate there. Anyone Italian in this room should feel proud to know that your cuisine positively changed the people's lives in a continent as big as the United States. And but what happened was they started to get fat from the pasta and the spaghetti. And I think that's when they started to be runners. And the other thing I wanted to say was, yeah, that's when they started to be runners, and that's why this young man went there. And they had to lose weight because of the cuisine. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you so much. So maybe you could respond how you like, but I'd love to hear people often turn to plant-based diets about health benefits, and I'm sure your customers talk to you about this all the time. Kate, is that one of those conversations on the floor?
Yeah, I also want to say that the experience of geography and culture and food or beverage is something that we are just so just obsessed with. You know, a lot of people ask, where's the inspiration for your cooking? And I think V Street was a great example, because we love vegetables, but also to travel the world and experience food and think about how different food affects your experience when you're there, especially as someone who's trying to stay vegan when you travel. It was always really interesting to us, and in a way, food was our way of understanding a new culture. I remember one of the very best meals we had in our entire life was in Seoul, and we had just landed. We went to our hotel, and we said, can you point us to a great place to get a vegan meal? And they wrote a place, and they said, go here, and give them this card. And oh my gosh, we had this most amazing meal.
15 courses.
Yeah, before I thought I picked out a bottle of Bordeaux. It was not a good fit. I was nervous. I was like, really,
I agree. Traveling, it's what has fueled us, and it's what really has opened up our minds, just to not visit and, kind of understand other cultures, and, to understand America better by traveling, I think you have to do it. But the food, though, is just so fascinating to see that, Peruvian cuisine is unique in the world, and it's influenced a lot by Japanese cuisine. The whole melting pot of the world. The one great thing we all have in common as human beings is we all eat dinner, and I think it's just the most amazing common denominator for all of us. Learning that most of the food that we have in this country did not come from here. Very, very few things are native to America. We have a dish at Vedge right now. I call it the Americas. It's not the name of the dish, but it's got quinoa, squash, and dried corn on it right now, because they're actually some of the few things that are indigenous to this country. But getting that perspective is really been eye-opening.
Excellent.
I have one from the online audience.
From the online, it's great.
How do you deal with the change of seasons? So, for instance, getting a strawberry in February in Philadelphia has quite a big climate impact. Does that change your menu?
There was a time, we wrote about this in the cookbook, there was a time that getting artichokes in January and tomatoes in December was considered a luxury. You had to be very, very wealthy to have these things shipped up for you from where they were growing. But then, as into the 40s and 50s, this became, common. You can get any vegetable you want at any time of the year. Now we're back to this whole seasonality, farm-to-table movement. And, we act like we invented the whole thing, whereas most of the world does only eat what's growing when it's growing. I think it's super important. First of all, the food tastes 100 times better when you get it from just locally, and it didn't have to arrive in a truck. But listen, we're also we're human beings. We have built up these networks of transportation over the last century. Listen, a cup of coffee, a glass of orange juice, an avocado or an almond, you're not going to break the system if we all do it within reason. But I think if we can eat locally, 85%, everybody wins. We're all better for it.
Did you want to add, Kate? No?
Well, just again, like growing now and even writing our last bar book, it's broken into seasons. And I've just become so much happier living in this part of the world because I used to hate the winter so much. I would just freeze. We would complain. We'd threaten to move to Florida or California or something. But now I embrace it and I can recognize like, okay, there's a seasonality to the year and I can see it for what it is and what it contributes. So writing the book with that in mind and, just thinking about our menus with that in mind. Like I am so looking forward to when our asparagus pops up and then like featuring it on the menu. And we were growing strawberries and they came in prolifically last year. And maybe we'll have a great harvest this year. Maybe it won't be. So I guess it's just part of the fun.
Yeah.
Fernando.
Seasons are great until you're full of cabbage and potatoes in March.
Totally, yeah. The CSA box in the winter can be grim.
A little grim. Yeah.
By February. Fernando.
Thank you both for being here. I want to pick up on something you said, which is as most people want a good meal and not have to pay a fortune, and Brussels sprouts. So about 10 years ago, someone invited me to Vedge. We ordered Brussels sprouts. I think there were 5 Brussels sprouts cut in half, delicious. It was like $10. We also ordered cheesecake, which were the size of like 5 quarters put together, also $10. So, money's relative. What might seem expensive to me is not expensive to the head of an Ivy League university. But how do you price? And I understand that you have expenses. Rent, beautiful space, salaries, you guys have to make money. It just seemed a lot to me at that time, 10 years ago, and I wasn't paying. By the way, I'm not cheap. I mean, I am, but money that I would save, I would give to Rue Landau, your sister's campaign, who's the best city council member. But 10 years ago, $10 for 5 Brussels sprouts seemed a lot of money. Seemed like a lot of money. So just how do you price things?
Well, the first approach is that you have to look at, the restaurant is a business model, first and foremost. You can make a choice if you're going to be one of these very, very expensive tasting menus in town that you're going to pay $165 to about $225. I mean, if you guys are from here, you know the names of the places that are doing that. I find that I have a really hard time eating at places like that because, number one, it's still just food at the end of the day. It's a meal, and most of the planet cannot approach a meal like that. So I'm very, very conscious of that. You also have to look at, what you feel as an owner you should be making. This is not a Fortune 500 company. This is not a business you will ever get rich doing. You have to be really practical about what you want your take to be. And I think Kate and I have always approached it from that. Now, Vedge is unique in the sense that our food cost is obviously fairly low. We don't have lamb, we don't have lobster on the menu, we don't have exotic fishes or anything like that, from what we understand, spoil very fast, very hard to keep. And I hear they're sent back constantly too, so the food costs can be very high. The rent at our Vedge building is astronomically high. We took a giant leap of faith going into a place that we thought was going to get the concept we had, the attention it needed to thrive and survive. The biggest struggle we have is labor, because we don't have portions of fish or chicken that are brought in that are just throw it on the grill with some marinade. All those Brussels sprouts, everything, they have to be cleaned all day. So there's an average of 38 hours of labor each day that goes into a dinner service at Vedge. And that is the biggest killer after that. So I think at the end of the day, we just need to tell people that, Kate and I, we do this together. We believe deeply in the cause. It's mission-driven, but it's still a business. I think if we didn't make any money, people would think we're idiots. So we want to at least get paid for our work, and being reasonable about what you're going to make out of a restaurant, I think, is where you have to start. You will not get rich doing this. Can you survive and earn a decent living? Yeah, sure, if you really manage it right. So I can tell you that those Brussels sprouts and that cheesecake you had were designed to support what we were doing, to support the space, to support the upkeep of it, to support the staff, to buy the vegetables that are pretty expensive in the first place to do that. So,
I'd love to ask you guys a follow-up based on Fernando's question about you said that the labor because of the prep of vegetable-based meals is very high. So I think about this almost every evening as I'm leaving this building, 40-minute walk home, thinking about how can I, my kids are no longer exactly hypoglycemic monsters if their dinner's on the table at 6:30, but by 6:35 they are. So what are any tips for the home vegetable cook to, it's never going to be like slapping I don't even know what the words are, a cutlet of chicken, I guess you call it, on something. I haven't done this, but like
Do a cutlet of tofu.
Yeah, like no. Are there ways to make these things go a little faster?
It's all about the prep. Prep is a beast.
Yeah, because I can't pay an army of people to prep for me. It's just me. So
yeah, I mean, you just got to take a couple hours on the Sunday and just prep
for the week. Okay.
Put it in the fridge so you can easily make a meal. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kate, you have no further efficiencies.
I do the dishes at our house, so I'm on the opposite after the meal.
We have the same division of labor. Dina does the dishes, and I do the cooking. Simon.
Thank you. So back to traveling, the best tempeh I ever had was in Indonesia, and it just doesn't compare to what you get packaged here. Assuming that you guys are fans of tempeh, I would love to hear you be really eloquent about tempeh and how wonderful it is.
I love that you asked that question. Does everybody know what tempeh is? I have loved it and been such a big fan, and I feel like our son is now 17, and when I would cook for him when he was little, like I would always include tempeh in the dishes, and so he's got a palate for it. But I agree with you. It's oftentimes, I don't know, I guess like tight, and sometimes I don't know, it's a little bit hit or miss. But I still loved it because I knew how delicious it was, and the way I prepared it, I really liked it. He was a tough sell. I
can't stand it. I think it's vile. We were in Bali last year, and that tempeh was unbelievable. I'm like, are they cooking this stuff in butter? I mean, it was so good there. No, I mean, it's like anything else. I didn't like tofu when we first started as well, but I found a way to cook it, again, by listening to it and seeing what it needed. I developed this method where you crust tofu in like a Montreal steak spice, sear it on each side till it's golden brown, and it's delicious. I understood really early on that tofu needed salt and it needed fat to taste good. Tempeh, I felt, Kate said it was very dense. Tempeh, I felt, really need to be opened up. So what we do is we braise it for about an hour, and we had these great tempeh tacos at V Street that took to that method really well. They were great. It is an acquired taste though, but Indonesia, man, it's ridiculous. It's like the Guinness in Ireland. I mean, what?
Ma'am.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. I have kind of a fun question. So I've seen you on Beat Bobby Flay as one of the judges. What's that like, being on Beat Bobby Flay? I watch the show all the time.
Well, food TV, I'm fundamentally against food competition. I mean, there's something just not right about it. Listen, if the whole world had a great dinner every night, I'd feel so much better about it. But, I also have a lot of mouths to feed at the restaurant, so a little exposure is not a bad thing. No, it's great. I mean, food TV, it's crazy. I mean, the Food Network was at Vedge one time for an episode of Good Eats, I believe it was, or something like that. They were there, no lie, from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. for about a 15-minute segment at the end of an hour-long process. Same thing with Beat Bobby Flay. You're there all day for that little bit of a segment. You try everything blind in the back. Maybe I shouldn't tell you this. I might have signed something. But you try everything in the back, so you already know what you're tasting, and you talk about it, and you know what you're going to say. So when you are eating it out there, you're not trying it for the first time. And Chopped also, that was, I arrived there at 5:30 a.m., I got out at 8 p.m., a whole day just to film that. So it's an incredibly long, very tedious process with a ton of downtime, and it makes you really hungry. So it's something, yeah. They work very hard.
I see it in the middle here.
Hi, thank you for being here as well. I'm a personal fan of Vedge. So I've been vegetarian, sometimes vegan, for like the past decade. And one thing I struggle with for 10 years is when someone asks me why I am. And sometimes it's in good faith, sometimes it's in bad faith that someone is asking me that. But I have yet to figure out like a good, short, refined answer to why. Of course, it can open up a good conversation, but just like a 1 to 3 sentence answer on why you are a vegetarian. Sometimes I just say, oh, everything, right? But like then why everything? So I was just wondering if you have a good shorthand, refined answer for that question.
You shouldn't answer a question with a question, but you should say, why aren't you? You know? Listen, I find there's 3 reasons people go this route. Number 1 is ethical reasons. That's what got me started. I just didn't want to eat meat, but, you know, I love the taste. Second would be for environmental reasons. I mean, it is just a fact that, you know, the production of cow meat and pig meat is the worst thing for the environment by far. And the third thing is personal health, and that has been the game changer for what we do for our business. Some people really don't care about the environment, and they could care less about animal welfare. They do care about, you know, looking in the mirror. They want to look good in a bathing suit, and God forbid they get that bad report from their doctor. All of a sudden, vegan looks really, really good to them. So I think if you appeal to the personal health, even or the vanity issue with people, it's a very, very easy sell. You know, I want to look good, I want to feel good. Sure, I might get hit by a bus tomorrow, but I want to feel good every day I'm here. You know, why would you feel bad until you get hit by that bus? So I don't know. I wish I had a good answer for you. It's been 30 years for me. If you figure it out, tell me.
Kate, did you also since 16? And you?
Yeah, I think to your point that some people are asking for like one reason and other people are actually curious. I guess it really depends on what their angle is. Maybe the best response would be like, well, it works for me. And it's sort of like, okay, then they might ask you because they care. But if you're just saying it works for me, it makes it very personal and it's your decision to make. And so if they want to keep asking you, they can. But I guess, you know, I'm going back to 16 when I was, you know, at dinners and things. Like, I find that being a preachy militant vegan can be very off-putting. We don't want to be told how to live our lives, and we do not want to tell other people how to live their lives. So I think if you just focus on that's your decision and it works for you, and like you're obviously cool with it. I actually had somebody who, you know, we've been very honest that sometimes when we travel, we sort of are more of a vegetarian than a vegan, right? So like, sometimes it's easier and easier these days, but you know, we've definitely, like, I have eaten pain au chocolat in Paris, and I opened up to one of our customers who was hardcore vegan, and she was like off-put by that at first, and I was like, well, you know, and I also at my aunt's house on Easter, like, I will eat the potato salad, and she's like, oh my gosh. And then like 2 or 3 years later, she came to me and she's like, Kate, I'm so glad you said that, because it makes me be able to participate in things in my family at like a much more relaxed level. And believe it or not, I feel like because of that reason that she came to with herself, it has enabled her to stay vegan longer. So if I'm like 99.5% vegan, and if she's 99.999% vegan, she's still 99.9% vegan because she's given herself that little bit of grace and understanding that we're not in a vegan world. And I think that's such a key piece of whatever this goes to, because any policy you create, you're going to be talking to a lot of people with a lot of different, you know, lifestyles and factors they have to consider. So I think the point is to like try to model what you do and be proud of it, and you know, just sort of don't be imposing, but just try to be a good example, I guess.
Definitely better if you do want to encourage people to begin that journey themselves. To even do it for 1 day a week is a
Don't make it seem like a sacrifice, like it's going to be super, super hard. If they are curious, you know, you want to make it seem like it's doable.
That said, I know I'm getting dirty looks from the staff because I am probably one of those, you know, I won't say militant, but I definitely let people know what I think about the ethics of eating. We have time for probably 1 or 2 more questions, so, ma'am.
Hi, thanks for all this. It's really wonderful. I love food. I love different cultural food. There's not much you can put in front of me that I won't at least try. But I have kids, and of course the environmental thing is definitely, you know, in my mind when I cook, and I have definitely decreased the amount of animal products that I use in my cooking. There's certain things, cheeses and butters, that are a lot harder for us that are not vegetarian or vegan to find that work well. My question to you is, what about proteins, right? So I have growing kids that is really, like, they need protein. What are good proteins that maybe we don't think about when we're looking at plant-based foods that I could add to our diet?
Lentils. Lentils all the time, every day. I could eat lentils every day. All right, so our son is 17, and like he works out pretty much every day, so he's constantly wanting to eat protein. And Rich does all the cooking, so tempeh is another one that's excellent. Beans, so good.
Seitan.
Seitan. Yeah. I mean, there are so many, and if you go to the supermarket now, whether you're going to any of them, they all seem to carry like a nice range of different vegan proteins. But again, the whole food style, just approaching it with lentils, and lentils aren't terribly expensive either, so I feel like beans and lentils are like my favorite thing.
Yeah, and I am not anti-Beyond Burger, Impossible Burger. I think they serve a certain purpose. I think they're delicious. I mean, again, from this vegan carnivore's palate I approach life with, there's nothing that reminds me of the backyard big burgers we used to cook as kids out there. So I'm very much for them. They're loaded with protein. The process, we hear all about process, what's in it, process this, process that. Well, the process to get meat to the table isn't that lovely either. So I'm a huge fan of that for a big protein kick. But yeah, like Kate said, there's the classic ancient proteins of seitan, tofu, and tempeh, but beans are loaded with them. Broccoli has some. But overall, I think if you really look into this, we don't need as much protein as they tell us we need. I'm not a doctor. Don't quote me on that. I heard that.
So you brought up Beyond and Impossible. Your cooking, at least for since Horizons, has really de-emphasized anything that might be seen as sort of a meat substitutes,
yeah.
Mock meats. Yeah, I'm just curious how you've thought about that. Both it sounds like a personal life. You're all about Beyond Burgers, but that's actually one of the really distinctive things about your cooking as opposed to even other fine, vegan establishments. Can you?
Well, I find that they're transitional products. I mean, to me, for instance, we have a relative just had quintuple bypass surgery, and he's asking me, "Oh, I got to be careful about what I eat." Well, I said, "Listen, man, it's all about cholesterol." Because the whole idea of the Beyond Burgers came up with them being processed. I said, forget about the processing right now. You shouldn't have cholesterol. If you can eat, I can give you a bacon cheeseburger right now that is completely vegan, that has zero cholesterol in it, and it's going to taste amazing. Why would you not eat that? Forget about processing or what comes from where or anything like that. So I find we're also, we also live in a vegan bubble here, in beautiful coastal Philadelphia. There's a whole giant part of this country that, when we travel through the middle of the country, it's just a completely different world. Well, some people maybe in Kansas City or Boise, Idaho, if you give them a Beyond Burger, they'll say, wait a second, it wasn't really about the meat, it was about the flavor. Meat doesn't taste good, it's what chefs do to it that makes it taste good. And a Beyond Burger is living proof that it can taste great without any animal products. So again, I have to be careful about promoting it, but it's a great transitional product.
And it's really interesting you say. I'm curious. The other side of it too, though, is like you've sort of de-emphasized that in your restaurants.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just that, but also seitan and other things. So, maybe just kind of as we wrap up, you could talk a little about that.
I think the goal for Vedge was to put the vegetables in the center of the plate, put them in the spotlight, and make people understand that like you can be really creative and it can be very satisfying what you do with the vegetables, and you don't have to create or recreate a meatloaf dish or recreate a chicken piccata dish. Like you can just invent something new, like our roasted carrots, or really focusing on the vegetable itself. I'll also say I think a lot of what you get, the grams of whatever it is you're eating are probably greatly impacted by how your body digests it. So I feel like health is a choice that you can make every day, and that's what I try to tell our son, that it's an investment in your own health, and if you want to get all those grams of protein, make sure your body can digest it right.
All right, so unfortunately we are running up to the end, so we have 2 orders of business before we thank you guys. The first is we had a raffle for copies of actually the Vedge cookbook, and Lauren has a list for me of the I'll just read you if you've won one of these books, then when we're done, Pari here will have your book for you. So the winners are Michelle Berger, Sandy Van, Alex Naliath, and Luke Ling. So congratulations to you guys. For everyone else, you get to go to Amazon.com and help put the
You can buy it at Vedge and
weightlifting son
Ground
through
Divisions,
college. The other thing I need to do is just to tell you we have 3 really incredible upcoming events in the next week that I just want to let you all know about. On April 9th, we have a talk with Richard Fontaine, who's the Chief Executive Officer of CNAS, on the U.S. pivot to Asia and the rise of Chinese power. On Tuesday, April 15th, we'll have an event called Common Sense Diplomacy with David Cohen, the former United States Ambassador to Canada, and Amy Gutman, the former President of the University of Pennsylvania and Ambassador to Germany, and Andrea Mitchell, NBC News' Chief Washington and Foreign Affairs Correspondent. And on the 16th, we'll have an event discussing human rights and migration with Her Excellency Amy Pope, the Director General of the International Organization for Migration. All of those will be here. All of this will also be streaming, so I hope that you'll all participate in all 3 of them. But most importantly, Rich, Kate, thank you so much for coming back to Penn. We hope to have you again.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.